This right here, this is what happens when you don't use the right tools to tailor your clothes. Learning how to use a sewing machine and teaching myself how to tailor my own clothes was hands down unequivocally the best choice that I could have ever made. But there was a lot of mistakes that I made along the way. I'm SD, I'm gonna tell you what those are. I don't like long intros though, let's do this. Tailoring my clothes so that they are just way too tight. When I started on this tailoring journey, I quickly lost sight of the fact that there is a massive difference between fitted and tight. Like a big difference. I was so used to wearing just baggy, untailored, unfitted clothes that I went way towards the other side of the spectrum and I made all my dress shirts and my t-shirts and my pants just, oh, they were so tight. You see, on dress shirts, what I would do is I would tailor them so tight that the buttons would start pulling at themselves and it just, oh, it looked so stupid. Look at this shirt. This shirt looks ridiculous. You're gonna notice a reoccurring theme with this shirt because it checks at least one box on every single mistake you will hear me say in this video, so just wait for it. But in my mind, it looked great because I tailored it myself and it looked a lot better than all the baggy dress shirts that people wearing from Kohl's, right? No, not really. I looked like a buttoned up Polish sausage. Pants, and more specifically chinos, were the biggest casualty of this whole learning experience because it was at this point that I made the transition from wearing gym clothes all the time to wearing normal clothes. And at that time, slim fit chinos or skinny fit chinos, they really weren't that much of a thing. And I had some thunder thighs that looked like a redwood tree, so in my mind I thought, hey, I'll make my own skinny chinos. What could go wrong? No, don't get me wrong, slim fit chinos, yeah, they can look amazing on you, but you gotta kind of take into consideration everything you're going to do in those chinos, and by that I mean, are you planning on sitting down? Because the tailoring mistake that I would make is I would go and I would measure them and I would pin them and then I would just stand there when I tried them on. I'd see if I liked the fit just standing there. But guess what? You don't just stand there on your pants. You actually move and bend and stretch and sit down when you get in your car. And hey, look at that. SD's pants look awesome while he's standing there, but he's sitting down. He's got the world's worst case of moose knuckle. Have fun with that visual. And so I discovered the flex test, and if you've watched any of my tailoring videos before, you know how important the flex test is, because what you want to do is you want to measure your garment and you want to pin it and then move around and bend and stretch and shake. I made a tailoring video oh my gosh, made a tailoring video on how to tailor a jacket. And I thought it'd be a good idea to then, go in the park and play basketball or pretend to play basketball, play volleyball and tennis and play around in a playground to see if it actually fit me well and held its shape. And it did, but yeah, see, behind the scenes, you didn't see all of the people with their kids looking at me like, what's that grown man doing on a playground spinning in circles and swinging on a swing? Should we call the police? So do the flex test, yes, but just maybe do it in the privacy of your own home. Oh, using the wrong tools. I made this mistake a lot in the beginning, and I see other people making the same mistake. And the thing is if you want to become good at tailoring your own clothes, you always have to use the right tools. Yeah, it's super easy to cut corners and just kind of use whatever you have lying around the house, but don't do that. You're not gonna get the results that you want that way. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. 3 examples for you. When I started tailoring, I used a seam measuring guide as opposed to fabric measuring tape. I used sidewalk chalk that I stole from my daughter as opposed to sewing pins or actual tailor's chalk. And last but not least, I thought it was a good idea to just use a regular pair of scissors that we had lying in a junk drawer as opposed to dedicated just fabric scissors. Let me break all of these down for you real quick. A seam measuring guide is just that. It's made for measuring your seam, or more specifically your seam allowance, which is just that distance between the edge of your garment and that new stitch that you made, or your old stitch. It's not too complicated. Now, if you want to measure how much to take off of a dress shirt that you want to tailor, let's say you want to take off 1.5 inches, you can use it for that. That's totally fine. But you are going to hit a wall when you want to start to do more advanced things like, I don't know, putting darts on a dress shirt, because what it's not going to allow you to do is measure the distance between both of those seams together, or the top and the bottom of your dress shirt. So things like adding darts are a big ol' no bueno in addition to about 6 other things if you use a seam measuring guide. So don't be SD, just just use fabric measuring tape. This was actually one of the very first pairs of pants that I ever tailored myself, and I didn't know what I was doing. Now, the reason why all this fraying up here is happening is because I didn't put a zigzag stitch right on the edge here, and I thought it'd be a good idea to instead just put 2 straight stitches. You see those doubled up stitches there? That's just 2 straight stitches, which make my pants strong, you know, as strong as they would be as when I bought them. So that's fine. That's not the problem. That's never been the problem. I love these pants. They're amazing. The fit is just perfect. But it's all of this. Whenever I wash them, this is what they do. They start to fray. And this seam allowance, which again is just the distance between the edge of our garment and this new stitch that we made down here, it starts to get smaller and smaller. So this isn't gonna stop ever. I can keep cutting these off. I do keep cutting these off, but they just kind of come back and they keep growing. They get longer and longer, and this eventually is gonna get down to this, the first of my straight stitch, and that's not what your straight stitch is made for at all. It's not made to prevent fraying. It's made to just hold your garment in place. So while these are my favorite pants and I love them and I wear them like, I don't know, maybe like 4 times a week. Don't tell anyone, I only wash them once. They're on borrowed time, unlimited time, so learn from SD. Always use the right scissors, always put a zigzag stitch on the edge. And sidewalk chalk, really SD? Come on man, you know better than that. No wonder my kid was so mad at me when she couldn't go outside and use her sidewalk chalk, because I used it all. And it will work in a pinch if that is all you have. That's not what I'm saying, but what ends up happening is if you use sidewalk chalk, you have no idea if it's gonna stain your garment or not. And you know what's gonna make you real mad? When you get the perfect fitting garment, but it's stained because you put chalk on it. And I have, and yes, use tailor's chalk, but no, just use sewing pins. They're so much easier because what sewing pins will do is they will actually hold that spot on your garment. Whereas chalk, yeah, you know where you want that new seam to be, but it's not holding anything in place. Your garment can still kind of slide over itself and just kind of get all out of shape. Save yourself some time, use pins. Oh, and not all scissors are created equal. You can't just go in any random drawer in your house and just grab whatever pair of scissors you see. Because before they touch your garment, you want to ask yourself one and only one question. When was the last time you used those scissors? Did you use them to cut up the rings on that 6-pack of Coors Light? Because that's usually what I use my junk scissors for now. That means that you want to keep those scissors far away from your clothes. What we do when we tailor our clothes on this channel is we cut that original seam off, the one that came from the factory, leaving about 5/8 of an inch. That's called the seam allowance. And you want to make sure that your scissors are as sharp as possible for this, because what's going to happen is your garment's going to get all frayed when you cut it. And we want to kind of minimize that fraying as much as possible. Now, it's gonna fray, it's gonna happen, that's totally fine, but when you use just like a random pair of scissors for that, it gets extra frayed, and when we go back to put a zigzag stitch over that to prevent it from fraying in the washing machine, it can only do so much, and then you look on the inside of your washing machine and you're like, huh, there's a lot of little red, lot of red on the inside of my washing machine. I think I'm gonna keep that in there. Not measuring and just taking my time, because see, tailoring, it's pretty similar to carpentry. This is why you measure twice and cut once. This shirt, it would have been fine if I took into consideration that I was taking off fabric on the side seams and adding darts. There's kind of a delicate balance or a happy medium between the two if you're doing both. So you want to take that into consideration first, because if you add darts, those darts might end up making your shirt too tight if you take in the side seams first. So to clarify a little bit, if you know you're going to add darts to your shirt, be a little bit more relaxed on taking in those side seams. Now the good news is there's no permanent mistakes in tailoring, until you start cutting things, that is. And the even better news is if you mess up, you can just use a seam ripper to rip out that stitch that you just made. But the bad news is if you mess up, you have to use a seam ripper to rip out that new stitch that you just made. If you've never used a seam ripper, it's easy. But it's also the most annoying thing in the entire world. It's so frustrating. I mean, you gotta take it and you gotta like cut a couple of stitches and then start to pull the thread out, and it just takes so much time and it's so tedious. Oh, these darts are so tight. And if I was up for it, I would use a seam ripper to rip them out, but Nah, ain't nobody got time for that. Measure multiple times and then sew and then cut, or this is gonna be what ends up happening to you. And look at this fraying. This could have easily have been solved with a zigzag stitch. Now, don't panic. If you put darts in your shirt, this actually rarely happens. I should have known, and I kind of should have seen it coming, because a cheaper, more synthetic material like this was like a $17 dress shirt at Kohl's. This can happen if you don't use the right scissors. So while it's rare, this could happen, so use a zigzag stitch just in case. And all of that could be avoided. All of that could have been avoided for me in the beginning if I just took my time and made sure that I got the measurements right the first time. That's why we said the flex test is key. So don't be like SD, and if you're doing those things, now stop. And if you're not doing those things, oh man, you're gonna save yourself so much time and frustration. That's all I got for you. SD out. See ya.